Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. We're joined this week by several lawmakers to talk about adoption bills that have been passed into law the last couple of years so you can make adoption a better choice for families in Idaho. We're going to start off with Terry Marcroft, who's Executive Director of Unplanned Good. Terry, tell us about your organization.
Thank you so much, Logan. I appreciate that. Unplanned Good is dedicated towards advancing adoption as an option for women facing unplanned pregnancy. So many women don't know about adoption today, and so consequently, 99% of them are choosing between abortion and single parenting often. So we just want to get the word out about adoption and how much healthier it is these days so that women realize that that's one of their choices.
Especially important in our post-Dobbs landscape where Idaho is fully able to implement its abortion restrictions.
Exactly. It's nice to know that there's another alternative.
Very good. Well, joining us around the table here, we have Representative Barbara Ehart, Representative Heather Scott, Senator Tammy Nichols, and Senator Julie Van Orden. Senator Van Orden, let's start with you. You worked on a piece of legislation last year having to do with baby boxes and surrendering children up for adoption for parents who aren't necessarily able to keep them. Talk to me about that bill and kind of the background that's brought us here today.
The background to that bill was a birthing center in my city of Blackfoot. They were the ones that approached me because they were in the process of installing a safe haven baby box in their facility, and they had to go to the city council, they felt like, to get an ordinance passed to be able to do that. And so their approaching me was having them help with a bill that would allow it statewide so that different safe haven entities could be able to install these baby boxes in their facilities. And so I was working on that at the same time. Terry came through with Unplanned Good, and she had talked to the lieutenant governor, and he put her my way and said, why don't you go talk to Senator Van Orden about this? So that's how her and I got together. And from there, we drafted some bills last year that had to do with adoption as an option because we realized, like Terry said, there are not a lot of people that realize that, adoption hasn't been the focus for a long time. And we wanted it to be an option there. The parents knew that if there was a chance that they weren't going to be able to raise a child, that they would choose adoption and have a family for that baby.
So the bill that was passed into law last year set up the framework for these boxes because there's all these legal details that need sorted out, parental rights, etc. What's the change to the law that has been made this year?
Senator Nichols and Representative Scott had been to a conference, and they felt like there needed to be more in the safe haven law. And so they asked, and they brought legislation forward that says a baby that's placed in a safe haven baby box will have a forever home within hopefully 24 hours. And so that's what that bill does. I had also been approached last year by the tribes having concerns with maybe tribal babies that go into the safe haven boxes. And so we did work with the tribes this year, the Idaho tribes, to put language in there that addressed if the child was a tribal member.
Sure,
and
Indian child welfare
right.
issues. Senator Nichols, Representative Scott, would you like to weigh in on the baby box and the adoption issue?
Well, I guess I'll just say that the baby box issue was really interesting to me. It was started in the Senate by Senator Nichols, and Senator Van Orden did a lot of the work with the tribal work to make sure that all the details were worked out under the federal code, and it was a bill that everyone could get behind. I mean, who doesn't want children to be adopted out? It was great to have a bill that we all agree on, and there was no bickering or fighting over for once. So that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I'll just say that, we love our foster families. We totally need them, and what they do and the work that they do for kids is amazing. We also know that there's been a strain on a lot of the foster care system over the last little while, and here you have the opportunity for a baby that is, the babies bond very, very quickly in their early months of life. And you have families that are ready, they're vetted, they are waiting for that phone call. And so we just felt that would be a great way to be able to facilitate that. And we would prefer to find a baby in a box than in a dumpster.
Absolutely.
Especially when there's women that are in those crisis situations and they just don't know what to do, but to give them an option. And not only do we have the boxes available, but I mean, they can take their baby to a hospital or to a police station, a fire station, that are, they have 24-hour presence there. But the tribe issue was the one that we needed to kind of figure out the best way possible. So Senator Van Orden just did an amazing job just kind of facilitating that and getting their help. They even came and testified on behalf of the bill. And so it was just great to see how that whole process worked out to help benefit babies and adoptive families.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense, especially with how closely tied the community of Blackfoot is with the Fort Hall Reservation. So there's the one box that's in place in Blackfoot now. The Bonner County Board of Commissioners has done some contracting. They're in the works of getting one of these boxes in place. Moving away from baby boxes, what are some of the other things that have been accomplished this year helping adoption in Idaho?
So we worked on what's kind of known across the country as the Baby Olivia bill, which is a fetal development bill. Last year, we passed adoption in our education. And so to kind of continue that process, we wanted to bring in the basics of biology, really, for kids in school between 5th and 12th grade to be able to really understand that a baby is a baby. And Representative Scott had a great story that has just stuck with me, so she should probably share that.
Well, I had a niece visit me from out of state. We were at a county fair, and there was a display of the baby development and with the different sizes of babies. And she said, well, that's not real, Aunt Heather. She said, we learned in school it's just a clump of cells. And she said, it's not the way it is, and that's false advertisement. And I thought, wow, this is bad. Our kids don't understand basic biology. So this is a good bill. It gets the visual into the children's head early, and it leaves it to local control, so teachers can decide what video they want to show. We kind of like the Baby Olivia one because we've seen that a lot, and we've worked with live action. But there's several videos, so we kept it in local control, and it just puts that visual. I think it will foster life in children. It will foster that culture of life that I think we're missing these days. When people know it's a real baby.
And Idaho's the third state to pass this. There are several other states, though, that are looking at doing the same thing. So I think it's a movement that will take place. And again, like Representative Scott was saying, just planting that seed of this is a baby, this is a life, this is the basics of biology and development. And when you can understand that's your fundamental foundation for understanding life in general.
Exactly.
And is this envisioned to be part of the health curriculum, like the sex ed classes that kids are taking? I mean, I certainly remember in my 9th grade health class, we had a guest speaker who came in with a bunch of little 3D models of how big, from the embryo to the fetus to the baby, all those different stages. That certainly stuck with me. So is this video meant to be implemented as a part of that, or is this going to be its own thing in the curriculum?
Yeah, it's really its own thing. So it's not in our sex education, family and sex education section of law. It's in its own fetal development section. So it's for when they're talking about biology primarily, but if they're also discussing contraception, STDs, things along those lines, then this is also part of that portion of it.
Okay.
They say that a picture's worth 1,000 words. So getting those pictures into the minds of young adults is really important. It gives them a foundation for their pro-life beliefs. And it also, I think, arms them to not be so vulnerable to the social narratives that tell them it's just a clump of cells. So we're very pleased about that bill.
Okay. Let's talk about the resolution that you all have for advancing adoption in Idaho. It's described here as a third option resolution. What does that mean?
Yes, I'll comment on the big picture of that, and then Senator Van Orden's been a big champion for that. The third option resolution, it's actually a coalition of national adoption organization leaders, who believe that our whole society would be so much better off if we shared the word about adoption and how much healthier it is these days. And so, and even just today, we heard that President Trump had defunded Planned Parenthood in 9 different states. And so we're thinking, why not take some of that $700 million that's available to support abortion every year, or had been available to support abortion every year, and put it towards adoption education and birth mother care, so that many women would like to choose life if only they realized that they didn't have to parent. And so advancing that idea and having them encouraged to choose life just by knowing more about how adoption works these days is the idea behind the third option programs. And so we would be looking at potentially funding them on a state-by-state basis, but Idaho is the one in the first spot to put some of these programs into action, and that's where Senator Van Orden has been a champion in this area.
Senator Van Orden, talk to me about the third option resolution.
We put this resolution together to address just what Terry had said about the possibility of the new administration helping with funds that they have available to come to the states, and Idaho being able to put some sideboards on that so that we would be able to use those funds for birth mother care or adoption education in that realm. Not that we're saying they should send them to us, but if they become available from the new administration, that we would surely like us to be able to help with the creation of the grants that come to the states, and make sure that those are what the monies are used for.
And so what sort of services would these be envisioned to be funding?
Some of our bills had to do with helping birth mothers with costs for maybe legal services of their own, or pre and post counseling, and some of the health care that they have going on when they're. It would also help the adoptive families to take care of some of the expenses, because adoption has become pretty expensive.
Representative Ehart, what are your thoughts on this, on the adoption improvements we've been making?
You know, I have an interesting take, and that is in June 23rd of 2022, I was actually in Washington, D.C. I was there for the 50th anniversary of Title IX, but it turns out the next day, I started getting phone calls. My phone was blowing up, and it was for interviews concerning the fact that Roe Wade had just been overturned. So I was in D.C., and I went down all day with the protests that were taking place, and just down there during this moment of what it was almost 50 years of fighting this Roe Wade decision. And so the one thing that I said at that time, and would continue to say, is adoption was what we needed to do. It was where the focus needed to be. It was very clear to me. And so to see that we have legislators coalescing around this idea of adoption and doing things to open it back up. I mean, I've absolutely been one that I've been saying we're selling our kids. Adoption is far too expensive right now, and we need to continue to do things to make it available, to remind people that it's an option. You know, when we lost LDS social services and Catholic services and adoption, I think that really hurt. And so to see the work of Senator Van Orden and Senator Nichols and Representative Scott, to be part of it, and what Terry's brought to this, and she's been completely engaged. It's really uplifting and something that I actually had started last year and will be looking to bring back next year, but it's an adoption tax credit. But we need to continue to do whatever we can to make adoption a viable option to mothers out there who maybe have gotten pregnant and it wasn't something they planned.
That's what all of the third option programs are meant to do. So they're first educating about adoption to build awareness about that option and what it looks like today and how it's so much healthier than it used to be. And then second, taking better care of the women who choose adoption. Because if they're determined not to parent, for them to know that they can actually choose parents and then possibly even keep in touch throughout the life of their baby as they grow up in the adoptive family. All of that is very healthy. It's become very transparent, and everybody ends up being blessed by that decision if only the woman is aware of her options, truly, really full informed consent. That's what we're advocating for. Idaho is embracing that entire third option program and will be the #1 state that ventures into this and sees what kind of a difference it could make. And then once again is leading the country in innovative adoption-related new programs and processes that the rest of the states are actually learning from. Some of our adoption legislation from last year is being introduced in new states this year, like, for example, the education bill that we worked on bringing adoption education into the health ed classes. That's being introduced right now in California, Oregon, and New Hampshire. So that's wonderful to see others taking up the laws that Idaho has passed.
Not the reddest states I've ever heard of.
Not
either.
the red states even, exactly. And then the third option program, for us to be first and leading in that too, thanks to the leadership of Senator Van Orden, to lead in that too. We're looking at other states following us in that as well. Missouri is looking like #2. Texas is signing up as well. So, or we think we're in discussions. And so all of that's going to be very exciting, but just points to real Idaho leadership in all these adoption-related initiatives.
Yeah, I think there's, from my perspective on the press desk anyway, there's been a real conscious effort among the lawmakers to make sure that adoption doesn't have to be this secretive, shameful thing that it used to be. It's been a real pursuit of openness.
Exactly. It's all about transparency now, which is so much healthier for everybody.
Yeah, and I would say that, a lot of the time we're vilified as we don't care about the moms, we don't care about this or that it's just, we just want them to have the babies and then we don't care about it after that. And that's just not the case. We want to make sure that everyone's being taken care of. We want to help the moms and help the babies and provide those opportunities that the babies may not have, or the adoptive parents may not have, because like I said, they're waiting for that phone call to be able to get those kiddos. So we're very excited for it, and I think Idaho's going to lead the way in a lot of these ways and continue to do so. And adoption is an innovative area that we're finding really interesting and innovative ways to be able to handle it.
All right. Well, I know we all have our respective chamber floors to get back to, trying to get closer to signing the diet. Thank you all for being so generous with your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Logan.
Thanks for listening to the Idaho Reports podcast. Tune in to the Friday show at 8 p.m. on Idaho Public Television, and visit idahoreports.org to stream episodes and keep up to date with the events of the 2025 legislative session.
Support for Idaho Public Television comes from the School of Public Service at Boise State University, providing objective and impactful research for Idaho and beyond, and academic programs with hands-on learning that equip students to be effective public service leaders.
Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.